Mike Broomhead, live from Milwaukee at the RNC.
All right, this is why we are here, to get people like this on the air with us. Someone I've talked to quite a bit in the past, but meeting face-to-face for the first time. Marc Lotter is joining me. Marc, this is great.
Mike, it's great to be with you in person.
It is. You spent time, you were the communications director for the Trump campaign in 2020. So let's start off with that. How is 2024 going to be different from 2020 and from what you're seeing from now to November? How is it different?
The biggest thing is that Joe Biden didn't have a record in 2020, and so there was nothing you could compare him to. So you couldn't go back and attack him for things that Obama did. You couldn't go back and attack him for things that he did in the Senate. And so he was able to hide in the basement, basically say, oh, I won't mean tweet, I'll end the pandemic and I'll work across the aisle. And, well, that's all he had to say. Now he has a record, and it's a record that's easily contrasted with the record of President Trump. So from the 2024 standpoint, it's so much easier because all you have to do is say, well, are things cheaper than they were back then? No. Is the border more secure? No. Can you afford your gas and groceries now? No. Well, that's all Joe Biden.
And that's the thing. Biden's going to try to say promises made, promises kept, and he kept some of his promises, but is it improving your life? Are you better now than you were all that time ago? And that's going to be the fight. But what are the other issues? You brought them all up. Are those the key issues for Donald Trump moving forward?
I think those are the key issues that the American people have said over and over again. It's it's the economy, stupid, which is the old line, the great line from James Carville. But then obviously the southern border. And what the southern border is not just, obviously it means something different in Arizona and Phoenix, although I would say many states right now are border states.
Right.
But when you look and you see young college students being raped and tortured and murdered in Atlanta, in New Jersey, you've got illegal immigrants beating police officers in New York City and being let out. Every community now is dealing with it. But then even broader than that, all you have to do is look, on the local TV news every night or local radio news. You're hearing about the smash and grabs. You're hearing about people who are breaking into all these stores and prosecutors not doing anything about it. So crime, the border, those are the key topics for today at the Republican National Convention, but I think they're going to be big. And then also the foreign policy. We really haven't had a foreign policy election since, I would say, 2004. It was always kind of in the back. Yes,
right.
There's always, because you're the president of the United States, but really since the 2004 election, maybe a little bit in 2008. But since then, we really haven't had one. Now you've got wars raging in the Middle East. You've got wars raging in Europe, and both of them happened on Joe Biden's watch, and I think are a direct reflection of Joe Biden's lack of leadership.
In the aftermath of what happened, the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania on the weekend, and now this call for civility and discourse, is it possible to have civility and discourse, or is it just going to be these personal attacks? Because if you're talking about the issues like you are, how do you win on the issues if you're on the other side of that?
Well, the problem is they don't have issues they can run on, and they don't have issues they can win on because their record is so bad on all of those issues, which is why they're running basically an attack negative campaign, whether they're attacking Donald Trump personally. Now they're attacking J.D. Vance. They're attacking extreme MAGA. Who doesn't want to be extreme about making America great again? But sure, okay, fine. They're even attacking Project 2025. Now, in my day job, I actually work for another think tank that's not affiliated with Project 2025. But this is what think tanks do. It's in the name. They think of stuff, and they write stuff down on paper, and you hope that a president or a senator or a congressman or a governor is going to want to take their policies and go, ooh, I like what you did with that, but maybe, if I put something over here that someone else did, they had a really unique idea, and now we've got something. That's what think tanks do on the right and the left. They think. Shocking. I think they get paid by the word.
Let's talk about the campaign and the numbers, because if you look at the poll numbers, I was looking this morning, in all the swing states, it looks as if Trump is up, but the numbers, Arizona's up 7, and that's the biggest number so far. Do you see those numbers expanding? Do you believe those numbers are true? Do you see this being within the margin of errors like a lot of polls are saying, or are you seeing it differently?
I see it differently, and while it may end up, here's the thing about the polling. I went back just recently, I think it was last week before we came out here, and I looked on Real Clear Politics, the Real Clear Politics average. But when you look whether it was nationally, which is meaningless, it's about as meaningful as the ESPN power rankings, but they're fun to talk about. So you look nationally, in 2016 and in 2020 on this date, Donald Trump was losing to Hillary Clinton and or Joe Biden by about 7 or 8 points. Now he is up about 3 points, so about an 11-point swing. You look in all the battleground states. Each and every battleground state was 7, 8 points in favor of Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton. Now Donald Trump is up 3, 4 points in every one of those battleground states. So what that tells me is that we are seeing a 10 to 11 point shift in the electorate in 3 years. That's an amazing number. Even go someplace like New York. Joe Biden won it by 23 points. The last polling right now has it around 8. All right, a 15-point swing. May not be enough to flip New York, but what we're seeing is a double-digit shift away from Joe Biden toward Donald Trump. We're seeing it with young voters, black and Hispanic voters, labor union members. All of those numbers show a double-digit shift. And it may not be enough to flip a state or flip a demographic, but in an election that was decided by 43,000 votes in 3 states.
Yeah.
That's a huge shift. And the other thing I would add to it, going all the way back to 16 through 20 through now, Donald Trump has never underperformed the polling. He always overperforms the polling by about 3 to 4%. So if that's also true, then this thing is getting really out of hand for the Democrats.
Marc Lotter is joining us, former comms director for the Trump campaign. So give us some insight. I think this is the most interesting part. People I know that have met and spent time with the former president have a different perspective than what's portrayed and what we see. Can you give us a little insight in why you went to work for the former president and who he is, the man you know, compared to what the media sees and what we see in public?
So I came on board in 2016 with then Governor Pence when he was named the running mate basically this weekend and coming into the Republican National Convention. So I'd never met him before. And while, yes, he is larger than life, and that is all true, the thing that shocked me over the course of getting to know him in the White House was I understand and I get why he builds hotels and golf courses. He is in the hospitality business. And I remember there's a story probably December of 2017, somewhere in there. I'm up in New York doing TV on Fox News or something, and I get a call from Sarah Sanders, who was the White House press secretary at the time. She's like, hey, he wants to see you in the Oval Office. When are you back tomorrow? And I told her, and she's like, great, he wants to see you at 4 o'clock. So I go in there, and when you get summoned into the Oval Office, you never know what to expect. And so we go in there, and I think it was just Sarah, Kellyanne, and me who were sitting in the Oval Office with the president. And I'm sitting in the chair, like right in front of the Resolute desk, and they're on the couches behind me. And he just wanted to chat, thought I was doing a nice job, liked the interview I did. But he kept asking me, do you need anything? Do you need a Diet Coke? Do you need something to drink? Would you like a coffee? Can we get you anything, Mark? Are you okay? And I'm sitting there thinking, I mean, I've been in the Oval Office 100+ times. I'm never okay when I'm in the Oval Office. You're in the Oval Office. But he was more worried about how I was feeling, if I was comfortable. And I'm like, it kind of just dawned on me. I'm like, this is a guy who builds hotels. He builds golf clubs and resorts. He's worried about the customer, the user experience. He wants you to feel welcome and at home. And I'm like, that just really sums up the man.
And see, that's what we don't get to see. And everybody I've talked to, you didn't know why I was going to ask you that question. No. To a person, that's the way people describe him. Magnanimous, outgoing, bigger than life. And do you believe, last question is, do you believe that between now and November, after what happened and this now new pledge, he's changing his speech, is he going to show that side of himself to America? Is that going to be the next step forward? Is he going to show himself that way to the American people?
I definitely think he's going to still talk about the policies and the comparisons. But I do think you're going to see him wanting to bring people together. And I saw some quotes yesterday. I think he put it on Truth Social as well. You know, he shouldn't be here. So it's either through blind luck or higher power, and that makes you think differently. I mean, when you become an inch away from this being such a drastically different convention in America and world, I would tell you. And so I do think you're going to see him, and I think that's why, obviously, he spoke to President Biden over the weekend. He spoke to RFK Jr., according to the reporting. And the only thing I can take from it is the three of them, maybe separately and individually, one-off, and going, guys, we'll have our differences. We're going to have our differences. But let's stop demonizing the other side, because I'll tell you something. I worked on the '08 McCain campaign in the Midwest, and I was given a lecture afterwards to a college or high school government class a year or so later. And a conservative, you could tell, asked me in a really snarky voice, like, if you could meet Barack Obama, what would you say to him? And my response was, I'd stick out my right hand and say, it's an honor to meet you, Mr. President.
Right.
And I would say the same thing if Joe Biden walked up to me right now. I would say, it's an honor to meet you, Mr. President. And yes, I don't agree with anything that you stand for, and I'm going to try to defeat you with my last breath. But you're still the president. It's still an honor to meet you. And we got to get back to that in America, whether it's the president, the mayor, the governor, a congressman, a senator, your city council person, or your neighbor, to say we can have our political differences, but we're still neighbors, we're still Americans, and it's still an honor to meet someone who will put their name on the ballot, go through that nightmare and that gauntlet, and then hope to serve.
You are a great guest. It was such a pleasure to meet you in person, and amen to what you just said. It's great to meet you.
Absolutely, buddy.
All right, he's Marc Lotter. We'll be right back.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Catch up on Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast, and click the button in the middle to subscribe.